welcome to Liz at Home. I'm so glad you've joined me. Today I'm doing a video of this bird's nest that has been inspired greatly by the wonderful people at Let's Make Art and their video. I'll link the video in the description of this video in the more information at the bottom. So to start with, I've got this old piece of cardboard that was at the back of a pad of paper or something, and I'm just using some masking tape to sort of secure my paper so that it doesn't buckle. I've kind of aged the masking tape a bit so that it doesn't rip the paper to pieces, and I tend to reuse my masking tape once or twice. I also have like a butcher's tray that I use as a palette for this. That's also inspired by the Let's Make Art people because I love it when they use theirs. Then I'm using Princeton Snap Brushes. This is not Let's Make Art, a size 6 and a size 2. I bought these at Amazon. I don't think you can get them in South Africa, but any round brush, a size 6 and size 2, or a medium and then a smaller. Then I'm using some watercolor pencils. There's a kind of the Derwent one, there's kind of a brown, and there's just a Statler, a blue, and I just decided to use those to lay out more or less where I'm going to put this bird's nest so that I've got something to kind of guide me. And I decided to use the watercolor pencils so that they would dissolve. I'm using my palettes, mostly Daniel Smith and or Winsor & Newton Cotman watercolor paints that I've decanted into my own palettes there. I bought the tubes a while ago. So first just draw a kind of a wonky-ish circle, something that I find quite comforting and that I keep seeing on either if I'm doing a Skillshare class or watching something on YouTube or reading a how-to book, is that when you do something from nature, it really doesn't need to be perfect. And if you look at birds' nests, they are not perfectly round. They're kind of round, so that was nice. And then I decided to do 3 eggs, and I've decided to do a kind of a bluish color, and so I just drew 3 egg shapes, and the actual drawing with the watercolor pencil kind of dissolves in the water from the paint, which is why just using that as a layout is much easier than graphite, because when you put a watercolor over graphite, it kind of sets it and you can't erase it afterwards. So there we go. Now I start with just trying to remove that extra bit of paint, a bit of pencil there, and then I start with a very light wash on the egg so that it has plenty of time to dry. So I'm just using clear water on that little bit there and then trying to soak it up. I then use all my various paints. I used a mix of lots of different colors, and unfortunately I had thought that this butcher's tray was on screen, but it wasn't. So the paints and the colors I used are Daniel Smith Quinacridone Burnt Orange, and then a Luna Black. They're all Daniel Smith ones, unless I say otherwise. A Winsor & Newton Sepia, a Lucas Indigo, and a Daniel Smith Cobalt Blue. And then I later on used a Daniel Smith New Gamboge, and I also tried a Core Naples Yellow later on, and I threw various different paints at it as I was going, so you'll just have to bear with me. And basically, if you want to do something similar, I would just have a look at what I'm doing and then choose from your own paints with what you have and just decide on similar colors. I went through a time where I had first thought of maybe doing pink bird's eggs, and then I was looking for photos to try and find one, a reference photo, and I couldn't really find real birds' nests with pink. They had very clever people that had built birds' nests and things out of pottery and stuff, but I thought, oh, well, let me go with a slightly more natural looking bird's nest. So I hope it works out well. This butcher's tray that I was talking about just now, I then didn't buy from Let's Make Art because I couldn't afford it, quite honestly, with import duties, customs, and the devalued rand, which is our monetary system. It's just too expensive. And so I just thought, oh, well, this is something I won't have. And then I happened to be shopping at the supermarket and I saw this little one there, and it was incredibly inexpensive. It was at Checkers for any other South Africans that might be there. And I was totally delighted, and I bought it, and it really works very, very well. So that was my happy little find. Then I basically, after I've got all my paints down, I do a light wash over the bird's eggs and leave them to dry. So I'll just put on, I think I'll speed up this next little bit and put on a little bit of music for you to watch. So now that that's dried nicely, I'm going to do the background. I've speeded this video up a bit because, what's wrong with my English? Sped? I suppose that's right. Because it's just me doing this background quite a few times, trying to get the depth of color I wanted. I'm using the raw umber, and it was quite a fun thing to do. I really enjoyed painting this, quite relaxing. I was just a bit scared of going over the bird's eggs, but I want this to be quite a deep color. So I did it a few times and dried in between, left it to dry in between. So I'll put more music on for you to listen to, and you can watch this. There's nothing really to say about it other than at one stage I added a little bit of lunar black to the raw umber just to darken it down a bit. And I struggle, I'm using Canson XL paper, and well, they always say a bad workman blames his tools, so I'm not claiming to be a good artist or anything, so perhaps it's just that I'm not getting my water control correct or anything, but I keep getting these dried bits here and there that I struggled with, and then I sort of wonder if I'm overworking it or what. I was talking as I recorded this, but then I cut off that audio because each time I start painting, then my voice goes down to so slow, because it seems to me that my brain is completely incapable of talking and painting at the same time. I am in absolute awe of the people that I see that can do this, but I think I'm slightly impaired or challenged is the more better word to use. But I really cannot talk and paint at the same time. And when I do, and when I try and talk a little bit more brightly and quickly, then I inevitably go over lines. I'm not going to be putting music on this bit because we've nearly reached the end. What I quickly want to say is this Lunar Black is a very granulating paint, which I love, and it does add some quite nice textures into, if you like granulating paints. I do. I love the textures. So I'm quite pleased with the granulation of the Lunar Black mixed with the sepia. Now I'm going to carry on while this is still somewhat damp, and I'm going to be doing a few of the little weavy bits. So I've gone to my smaller paintbrush, which is the size 2, and I'm going to use some of the more orangey color. Can't remember what it was that I used now. It was Daniel Smith Quinacridone Burnt Orange. I'm going to actually mix that with some of the sepia. Let me see if I can get a color that I like. See what happens there, just for the first few. So, do you like kind of C shapes? So I need to actually put some more paint on here. I'm just going to activate my palette again, because I may want some of the quinacridone gold as well, and I don't really like Hansa Yellow Light, which is the yellow I've got in this palette. I may need to go to my other palette, because I find that Hansa Yellow Light very, like, almost neon-y. So I'm mixing that with the umber. Oh, I like that color. Let's see what's that there. That's nicer. Whoopsie, trying to use the very tip of my brush. I love these kind of pictures because I find they also help me learn brush control, which like you know, when you paint, your wrist needs to move, and when you color with color pencils, it's a completely different kind of feeling. So I kind of need to, I've also read to leave your hand resting on your little finger. Yeah, look at that. I get a much, be patient, Elizabeth, a much smoother, not smoother, thinner. But I don't want to rest my little finger there, because then it's still wet. Okie dokie, so now I'm going to have to bring in some of the browns again. So I'm using this palette. I have my paints all over the show in all sorts of different palettes. So I'm thinking there's a core transparent brown oxide. There's the sepia that I've got. There's a burnt sienna and a raw umber. I'm thinking of trying, this is a Lucas paint. I don't know if anybody, oh, excuse my arm there. If anybody knows the Lucas brand. It's one that I found in my art shop and P&A. So that was raw umber here. Let me try and bring it to life. So I'm mixing these colors. I'm taking this dark umber, which is really quite nice and dark, and I've mixed it with some Naples yellow into what I think is really quite a dirty diaper kind of color, but worked quite well to give a sort of a muddy look to some of these little twigs and things that I'm using as the light weave around the nest. I keep on mixing colors and using different browns, different ochres, different oranges and yellows to try and get the look that I want. And if you decide to also do this, that's basically all you can do. I don't think anybody can tell you do 7 strokes in this color and 3 strokes in the other. I wanted the twigs and the branches and things to kind of look as if they were organically coming out from the underside of the nest. I had quite a lot of fun doing this, but I kept being unhappy with the dark bit, and I put layer after layer after layer of color on that, mixing burnt umber and lunar black, not burnt umber, I'm so sorry, sepia and lunar black, both of them Daniel Smith colors. Although I may be lying to you, the sepia is a Winsor and Newton Cotman color, not Daniel Smith, but the lunar black is Daniel Smith color. Until I finally got a kind of dark color that I liked. So I'm going to put some music on for the rest, because there's nothing more I can really tell you about this, except when I got to the blue, I redid that and went over it and over it. And then I didn't like my white highlight, so I painted over that, and at the end of the day, I used white gel pen for a white highlight. So I hope you enjoy watching the rest of this video, and I'll chat to you just at the very end. I must apologize for the shadows on this, but I keep forgetting to switch off my overhead light. I've got another light up, and I continuously forget to switch off the overhead light. You'll see that I've started to paint over that white highlight, and you can also see now I'm doing some little dots and things to make speckles, but the paint is still slightly wet, so they bleed, and I work on that a little bit until I, just basically playing with it until I get it how I like it. So we're reaching the end of the video now, and as you can see, the white highlight is sort of gone now, and I'm still painting away and trying to find the right colors. You'll notice that there's some loose bits of twigs all around, which I've done on purpose, because when you look at a nest, they've often got those sorts of like loose wispy bits that have kind of unthreaded themselves, and I keep adding little bits and keep working on this thing. It's funny how one's eye just isn't satisfied, and then it reaches a stage, and then you kind of think, oh, okay, now it's not so terribly bad. I found the yellow that I used so very bright and neon-y. I wished I dulled it down a bit with maybe some of the orange or something, and I kept going on and trying to go over that, and then I tried to lift some of the dark blue, because my husband looked at it and said, no, now he thought the eggs were too dark. So I was working at this thing and working at it and working at it. And then I decided I wanted speckles, so I used the indigo blue to make some very tiny dotty speckles. I'm still going over I actually went right, tried to go right on some of those very dark, very bright yellow lines and made more and more twigs. I do think they help. Then I got some white gouache and I drew the highlight with the white gouache. I'd forgotten I'd used the white gouache and not a gel pen, and I do think that helped. So then the satisfying part at the end of taking the masking tape off and getting rid of the cardboard piece that I used to paint on, and the two next to each other. I think I prefer the first one I did. My husband does, but this is the one we painted today, and I'm fairly happy with it. So thank you so much for watching, and please remember to subscribe.